I'm here today with internationally award-winning architect Richard Kirk, and it's just such a great pleasure to have him in one of his own designs here at 9 St James Street. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you.
I've been a big fan of your work for a very, very long time. It has been described, much of it as monumental sculptures. Your work's been described as visually sophisticated and functionally sophisticated, and it's certainly the case for this property here at St James Street. Some of my favourite designs of yours are the ABC headquarters at South Bank, the Mon Repos Turtle Centre, the QUT Creative Industries Precinct, where I was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time doing my master's degree at. Rick Lapastria, a very famous Australian architect, is well known for saying that the first step in creating a great design for a home is to actually camp on the site. Now, I understand you've done actually a lot more than that. Could you tell us about that, Richard?
Yeah, sure. Actually, myself and my family, we lived here for a few years before we sold it, and we sold the property to Darren and Lucy. And that started the journey of designing the house for them as clients. But we had that prior knowledge of the site and learnt what was important about the site, how to live here, the importance of grabbing and sort of garnering as much of that northeastern light as possible. Because as you know, in Brisbane, it's a subtropical climate. You know, you want to be cool in summer, but you also have these colder months in winter. And where the site's situated, it's really important to get that sunlight into the depth of the house. And then, of course, it also had this amazing landscape around the site, which we wanted to really engage with. So we sort of really started to peel away the walls, and as you'll see, the house has some incredibly large openings, which I think are some of the largest you'll ever see, and all done with local suppliers, local sort of skill sets in terms of delivering these quite structurally quite challenging openings and sort of design elements of the building.
So I can see, looking around the home, there's so many beautiful features, so many different types of wood used. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So it is a timber and steel house in terms of the structure.
Yes.
But most of the timber you see here is local timber. So all the floors are black butt timber. All the window and door joinery is a New Guinea rosewood, which is, we use that because it's incredibly stable.
Yes.
And you can tell that the timber hasn't really aged. And one of the reasons why we use so much timber in our work is it's really the only truly renewable resource you can use in building. So it's the best thing you can do for the planet.
Yes.
And that's something that we've been exploring and developing on a range of different projects over the last 20 odd years. So it's something that probably distinguishes our work in a way, that we've tried to use timber in a very contemporary way to show that it is actually a modern or a contemporary material. It's not just a traditional material. There's a lot of underlying sophistication in the building, using materials which will last for a long time, but in their own right are renewable and safe.
Yeah, you can see that they've been built for the weather conditions. Everything is in perfect condition as though it was built yesterday, which is a real credit to the choices that you've made. I love how when you walk in the home from the street, it really does blend into the nature around, into the trees, into the canopies that we've got around. It's so unassuming when you walk in. It's only until you actually walk through the home, when you look up, that you really do see the scale of the grand design that we've got here.
Well, I think that's a good point. Something we've always strived for, we think houses should be secondary to nature and the landscape, so that, and also the street. We think houses do need to be demure or recede in the streetscape. We don't like our buildings, whether they be public buildings or private buildings, to dominate their setting. And it is really, we do reserve that sort of joy and that surprise for once you enter the building. So we try to reserve what's best from within rather than from the street. And I think that's about a respect for the street itself and the public function of buildings as the way that they make the visual setting of where we all live and live our lives, basically. So that's a real passion of ours, that buildings should be very understated, have a quietness about them, and celebrate the landscape rather than themselves.
Well, you've certainly met the brief there. It's a beautiful home to be in. So we're sitting here right now in the northeastern side of the home. We've got the kitchen opening up onto the living area through here, which is just lovely. Amazing light coming through, and sun in the morning, every morning, which is absolutely lovely. I love how we've got all of these walls here are movable. We can open up the entire side of this home. Can you tell us the inspiration behind that?
Yeah, we were really interested in trying to blur that distinction between what's indoor and what's outdoor.
Yes.
And we wanted that sort of seamless connection, so that you do want to live almost on a deck the whole time, but as we know that's not practical. So we tend to conceive of all these spaces as deck spaces that you can close up. And then we obviously then augment that with other spaces nearby that tend to give you that expansion, that extension. So you can have quite a, even this is not a small home, but it's a reasonable sized home, but you can have a space that's modest, but it can expand and open into the outside or the spaces adjacent to it. So this is really an exercise or an essay in how to remove any sort of containment of the room and let the wall virtually disappear, which is something you see a lot in Japanese architecture, and that all of the sliding panels evoke that sort of Japanese tradition of moving panels out of the way, and that you can then connect with landscape.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the staircase divides and unites the home as well?
The house is in many ways like a tower. There's 3 levels.
Yes.
And you enter into the middle, so you've got this ability to go up and to down. So the staircase became something that was to be celebrated in the way that it does connect those spaces. And you're right, the clients had a family that was going to change. Kids grow up and they have different needs, so the sort of the multi-levels actually aided that ability to, and the stair was actually a way of connecting these different spaces so that you could still hear what was going on from level to level, but you could still also have the privacy. And the stair also divides the house into a front and a back, as well as from different levels. So it's sort of, in a very relatively compact plan, it's actually quite sophisticated in the way that it allows you to live in the house in a connected way with one another, but also quite separate.
And what was your process in terms of the design for the bedrooms upstairs?
I suppose they were because they were higher and they were sort of in the canopy of the trees. We sort of conceived of those as, you'll notice there's a lot of glass in those spaces. We sort of thought of those as almost like tree houses. So that was sort of the nests of the house. Yes. The idea that they were sort of elevated. This is what's sort of concealed in the finished house is there was a hell of a lot of engineering going on in here. So it was almost a ravine as a site. And we had to do a lot of filling, a lot of modification of the site to get it to work the way we needed it to. So by the time we'd finished, even the actual upper level is in almost 15 metres above the lowest point. Yes. So the bedrooms are actually incredibly elevated, and in that sense they also capture different views and different light.
So of all the beautiful designs that you've done, internationally, this home was actually, you drew this up for yourself as your own dream home, I understand. What was it like to hand over the plans to someone else?
Good question. Well, I actually remember that very well. So look, initially we did sell the site to our neighbours who became our clients as well. And in many ways, every house I designed for clients, I imagine obviously that I'd like to live there as well.
Yes.
So that's my measure of having the right design for a client. If I would like to live there as well, that's essential in my mind.
It's a beautiful home. Richard, thank you so much for coming in, and it's been a pleasure learning more about you and your work, and particularly learning more about the home here at St James Street. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.